Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Boy, do I have an episode for you all today. Today, we're going to dive into the actual creation of the REST API that's going to take in our game events using the serverless cloud, which is a platform that requires no infrastructure as code. And then with that data, we're going to ingest that data that the REST API has captured in Foundry, setting up a REST API data source. And you also get to see some of the other supported data sources in Foundry. And then we're going to transform that data. So like once it's been loaded, we're going to go ahead and create a code repository, and we're going to transform the data into a clean state. And then once we have that clean state in place, we're going to create our ontology. And for now, we're just going to keep it simple. This is we're not trying to boil the ocean here. We're just going to create our events ontology, and we're going to build a simple analytics dashboard in Quiver on top of that ontology object. And you'll get a little preview into what the ontology is capable of. Keep in mind, I will do a separate video that fully breaks down a lot of the capabilities in the ontology when we get ready to build our workshop application. But today you are going to get to see end-to-end data ingestion, transformation, ontology creation, and more. So buckle up, people, for Foundry in action. All right, to build my API, I opted to use Serverless Cloud. And Serverless Cloud is another Sky Compute layer that abstracts away AWS. And all you do is basically write Express API syntax, and they built their own abstraction over the data storage layer and the database layer. And I believe under the hood, they're supporting S3 and DynamoDB. But what's really cool about this is not a single line of infrastructure as code that I have to write in order to produce my API. And if you guys are familiar with, if you're a developer out there, I'm sure you've heard of the serverless framework. Great group of people have produced great tools that lots of developers have used all over the world. And this is their next iteration. It's really, really cool. And Jeremy Daly is the GM over there and also the host of Serverless Chats. If you want to check out his podcast, he does some great work on serverless. But you're going to get to see why I'm so psyched on Sky Compute and why I believe that that's the future of cloud. Because writing infrastructure as code sucks. And I don't want to be invested in the AWS control plane. And that meshes really well with Foundry as well. So next up, you're going to see the API I created and how easy it is to deploy and manage. All right, guys, I got my API created, and I got all my tests passing and integrated in GitHub. And so what I want to do is kind of go over what I did to get everything working. And the API itself is written in TypeScript, super simple. Like Serverless Cloud makes this really easy. It's just an Express API syntax. If you're a Node.js developer out there and you work with Express, this is going to seem really familiar. So I just went ahead and made my simple API. It has a way for you to get events passing a start date and a limit. And then I went ahead and created a way to post events, and you post an array of events. So you can batch that stuff in, and which is what the gaming server is going to do. It's going to send batches of events, and we'll start inserting all of those. And then serverless framework fully supports testing. So it comes with like a test directory when you create this thing along with your API tests. So when I ran the generator to start my project for an API, it just creates the boilerplate test, and then I filled in all of the tests I want to run. It also supports populating test data and before all and after all. And what it does here is like you're still actually working, like when you run serverless test inside here. So like if I come in here and I actually just run test, it's pushing this up to my developer sandbox. So every developer in Serverless Cloud gets their own little unique sandbox that's running on the server. And it's actually going to take this code and execute it against the server. And that's how I can access all of their constructs, right? So this, and then you'll see here my tests have passed. But it's running within my developer sandbox. So like when I populate test data and remove it, it's not effing up like production or anything like that. So this is all running inside my little developer sandbox in the cloud. But that's really cool because I don't have to worry about any infrastructure as code. I can use all the same constructs like their data objects. By constructs, I mean these things that I'm importing here, like API and data from the cloud libraries, and it all just magically works. I don't need to worry about it. Now, what I also did was I went ahead and set up a CI/CD with GitHub along with all of the appropriate files for GitHub, including a pull request template and code owners file and issue template. And the workflows are in here. They're really simple. Serverless Cloud gave me a boilerplate to just implement for GitHub integration. And so for build, this will be triggered whenever we tag a new release, and it'll go ahead and run these commands. And these are straight from their documentation on how you test and deploy once you have a production release ready. Then anytime we merge with master on when a pull request is created or pushed to, we'll run the test command because we want to make sure our tests pass. And so that's all set up and totally running, and I'm super stoked. I'll leave a link in the description too where you guys can check out this repo. It's an open source repo, and maybe you want to contribute. So in addition to setting up the API and everything, they give you a dashboard. And the way serverless cloud treats your APIs is they let you specify stage variables. And the first stage they give you is your local one, which is like your local developer sandbox, which you can see I have here. That's my developer sandbox. And that's where all my testing and development is done. And right now I'm in the prod dashboard because it's actually got data in it. But it'll show you like the invocations, the error counts, like this whole console just comes out of box. Like I don't have to do anything to create it. Also has a way to interact with the API in here, which is super cool. So you don't need Postman. Data, so like you can query the data, and it basically they use their proprietary query language, which I believe is an abstraction over DynamoDB, and I gotta actually spell the keys correct in order to query items. But you can see in here where it's querying this data, and all this is pseudo data, by the way. It's not like real user data. We decided to use all fake users and everything when we generated the events. And that's of course to protect privacy and all that kind of stuff. It's got your storage area. So like in addition to data, like when you call data.get and data.set on the API to store data using your provided database, they also have storage, which is mapped to S3. I believe the way they do their data is they abstract it over DynamoDB, and the reason I say that is their query language looks like it is a tokenization string over DynamoDB's tokenization system. And storage looks like it's mapped to S3, which they've stated in their press releases, I believe. They also give you full log support, which is awesome, by the way. So if you want to see what's been happening with your functions, you can come in here and kind of see the generated log messages from all of your functions. I'm interested to see if it comes back with anything because I haven't been logging anything in my API. Yeah, I did. All right, cool. Looks like it took error out. The standard error gets piped out. If you not, so like it looks like anything that's unhandled exception will get piped out here, which is great. And then if you have like infos and warns, you can pipe those out. So basically anything you're pushing out to standard error, info, or warn is going to show up in your logs, which is awesome. You can see full metrics, right? So like it's really cool. Just literally did nothing other than ran a command and it produced all of this for you. So that's really cool. All right, I finally got the results from the API ingested in Foundry, mostly. We'll go over in a second. Foundry supports REST APIs as an available data source. You can see all the listed data sources in my instance. By the way, this is not a full list. This is just what came with my Foundry instance. The way they do this is through a domain-specific language, and they have an architecture for how this all works. And they do this, I'm assuming, because they want the ingest to be deterministic and you not to exploit the platform calling a bunch of REST APIs. And so they create this abstraction layer over it. And I'm assuming this helps with egress and ingress, just for security purposes. So there's this YAML file, and anyway, you have to know what the syntax is. You have to actually go through and read all the docs about how you create a call, okay? And they give you some examples like a time-based API call or a page-based or offset-based, and these are, relatively useful. They kind of let you see what's going on here. But the most confusing part for me was like trying to understand the syntax for a JSON extractor because I needed one in order. I had to get the last item in my result and verify it had a timestamp associated with it and then repeat the call if it did. And to figure that out, I had to refer back to this documentation for JSON node or something. I don't know what the hell this is. But the link in the docs was dead. The site's been like taken offline, but luckily there was a cached version by Google. So I was able to use that. And what I ended up coming up with using their domain-specific language, using a YAML, YAML file was I'm gonna create this thing. I'm gonna not cache it to disk. I'm gonna use one file for all of the results, not one per result, and then the output file type would be JSON. And what I decided to do was implement a while loop. It's going to use a get request. It's going to execute every 60 seconds. It's going to call this path and then interpolate these variables in it. Interpolate means just fill in these variables. I give it some initial values for those variables, and then I created a JSON extractor using that weird, funky JSON node path syntax, which is basically saying, go to the items array that contains all the result items, and then check the last item in that array, which is what max JSON extractor is referring to, and check its timestamp, right? And then assign that value to start. And then repeat this loop if that value is not empty. And so that's what I did, and my build went ahead and passed, and the data should be coming in here. I can't see it though. All I see is like the actual request data. So I'm not sure what I need to do to transform the results. It just maybe like I need to actually write a transformation in order to get it off the file this went out to in Foundry or something. So that'll be what I do next, but eventually there'll be data in here. And it is ingesting, like I did verify this did succeed. So we'll get that figured out. And then in the next step, we'll show how we build a pipeline to enrich the data. All right, I got figured out what the issue was here. We had to apply a JSON schema to the import settings. So we needed to let it know what type of response it was getting back. And once we did that, we started getting data. So you can see the raw events being ingested here, which is really cool. And then now we could build a pipeline. So we went ahead and built a pipeline. The data is coming in that raw in this table here in the raw folder. So I actually have a folder structure. It's set up to go into this raw events table. And then the first thing we're going to do is parse it. And so in here, I just define my input as that raw events table that imported directly from the API, and my output is going to be the parsed events table. And then I go ahead and we just set up the schema. This is the event attribute schema. It's a nested object, so you define it, and then you go ahead and attach it over here. And once that's done, we're just going to call this JSON to data frame function and apply the schema. And then we're going to select all and dump it out to the output folder here, or the output table. And then once we have the parsed events, let's take a look at those. So the parsed events has both the nested structure from the original, which we still want to keep, and then it also explodes those out out to the data frame itself. So we have those attributes here as well. And so what we're going to do is we're going to clean that up a little bit. We're going to just output these exploded attributes and get rid of this event structure. And to do that, we have our clean. And so that's going to go ahead and take the input as the parsed events table and then output the clean. And you can see here where we're just outputting that data frame. Really simple stuff, right? But what I love about Foundry is how easy it makes it to build this pipeline. Here's our pipeline definition. And we define all of our inputs and outputs in code, right? And we can build our tests if we want to. Right now I don't have any tests set up, but we can add those. And we can also add alerting and monitoring just like we showed before. But what's really cool too is if we start looking at our tables, so let's go back to the raw and let's check out the data lineage. So another thing that's really cool is this starts to get complicated as you build your pipeline. You're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I want to kind of visualize this. So here you can see my raw data ingest from the REST API, and then you can see the raw table. Then you can see the parsed events table. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Then you can see the clean events, right? So we have a nice visualization, and at each step we can see what built that thing, right? So I can see a preview of the data, and I can see what was responsible for building it. I can go to the parsed events table and see a preview of that. I can see the code that produced it. Really cool. I can check my data health. We don't have any health checks set up. We'll do that shortly. We'll enhance this with health checks and with unit tests. You can see your build times. You can see the code. This is just so cool and so clean. Like I have a complete visualization of my pipeline. But how clean is this, dude? Like from REST API ingest to a full, basically almost production level pipeline in less than a day. That's pretty cool. Even to get the actual API up only took a few hours. So we got the API up and we got the ingest done in less than a day, which I think is really, really cool. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more steps to our pipeline, and I want to join this with some device data and some session data. And we're going to go ahead and start modeling it in probably Contour. So Contour is a application in Foundry that lets you model your data really quickly and easily. And so we'll go ahead and do an analysis of the data once I've got it joined up with the enriched set. And once it's enriched with all that, and we start joining it in Contour, you're going to start seeing some actual cool looking stuff come out of it. And then from there, we'll probably move into either Quiver or into Workshop, and that'll be where we build like our actual application. So this is starting to take shape, really cool stuff. And in a minute, I'll show you the enriched data set. All right, I found an issue I had to resolve. I didn't properly cast the timestamp in the Spark pipeline, so I went ahead and just cast it appropriately now, converting the original timestamp, which is in milliseconds, to seconds. And that has an issue with the timestamp function in Spark, which expects the timestamp value to be in seconds. I gave it a format and an alias, and now you can see, all right, I have an actual timestamp value. So the next thing we're going to try and do, let me get rid of that crap, is create an ontology object. So if we look at our data lineage first, let's go back to the data project. And let's take a look at the clean data set that was produced, and we want to look at its lineage in the Object Lineage Explorer. And the reason is we want to, at least I want to verify, we don't have an ontology here. So this last event's ingest is some statistical data we track on the ingestion process, but we don't have an ontology object. And so we want to create one. We can go to a new object type, and we'll call this event. And the plural name will be events, and this is telemetry data from game plumbing framework games. And let's go ahead and spell check that, and let's select a data source. I wonder if it'll show me. Yeah, so here's the data set I want to make as the source for my ontology object. And that's going to be the clean events data that we just updated the timestamp value for, which includes all of the data that we brought in through the API just in the correct formats. So we're going to go ahead and select that. We're going to choose a title key, and that's what's displayed when you preview the data in Quiver and some of the other apps. So it's kind of like lets people know what kind of data they're looking at. And then we need to choose a primary key, which must be unique, right? And so we have this UUID field, which is supposedly guaranteed unique for this data. And we're going to go ahead and create our ontology object. All right, and we can see in here it's got all the stuff, created it all for us. So let's see what data types it shows. Oh, it correctly inferred the timestamp value. All right. So that fact that it correctly infers the timestamp value is important, because we'll see in a moment that when we want to model the data, that'll be important for us. We can also come in here and generate some write back capabilities. So I don't want to write back to my original data source. I'm going to create a write back, and this will be useful in Quiver and other apps where if you want people to be able to edit or add rows to this data set, and that might be value for testing purposes. And so let's see if I can replace that old one. Nah, let's just call edited GPM events, or game plumbing framework events. Let's try that, and let's just go ahead and create that. Phonograph needs to be registered. I'm not sure why it's not allowing me to register. Let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to save our ontology object with a write back data set. And then as soon as this is done, what we're going to do is we're going to try building on it. And by building on it, so it went ahead and created the hooks for Phonograph. And this gets more complicated. Phonograph is actually a pretty deep service, so there's a lot more you can do with it to trigger writebacks, but it is their engine for managing all the writeback capabilities. And then in here, I haven't really got a chance to play with this yet. So let's see if there's a way for me to do any kind of, you know what, I don't have time series hooked up in my install. I wonder if I can still model it. Yeah, maybe I can still model it. Or if it'll let me model time series with Quiver using this event. I think this is deprecated now. I think time series is preferred over this, but we'll see. Let's try and Associate events with, no, I don't need to do that. Associate events with time series, I don't need to do that. Choose a descriptor. Let's try the label of the event, and let's go ahead and save that. All right. And then the next thing we're going to do is go into our data lineage view and see if we can create a new analysis in Quiver based on our ontology. So it's really important, like once you start using Foundry's built-in tools to build applications, you want to build them on top of your ontology objects, and they're all built to do that. Let's go ahead and refresh our, I don't know if there's a cleaner way to do that than just hitting the rebuild button. All right, now we can see it does have an ontology link to it. So let's go ahead and expand this. And there's our ontologies event object. So that's really, really cool. And now that we have this thing, we can start doing some stuff with it. So let's go ahead and analyze it in Quiver. And for this purpose, I really want to be able to, let's go ahead and just call this G events test. And let's go ahead and look. We'll save it in Foundry for gaming. Let's see what we can do with this thing. It's going to take a minute for Quiver to register the ontology objects. You can see a preview of the total number of events. Looks like we have the labels showing up in here. So these are the actual labels of everything. Let's try to just do something simple here. Let's first kind of look at a bar chart by platform. So what do we have here? Device. Let's go by device real quick and see what we can do. Cool. And so it shows us a breakdown of the devices, and I guess there's some drill down capabilities too. All right, so you can see all the objects that made up that event and then plot those as well. So let's, out of all those series X, let's make a bar chart of the, let's take platform. Cool, 100% Xbox that are using that device. Let's try that, and then we'll see. Oh, it's updating. That's really cool. So Android. So that's awesome. So like as I drill down on these things, it'll update my preview down below, which is really cool. Super cool. So there we go. And the data looks correct. Wonder what it will tell me if I go Surface Galaxy. I wonder what will be on Galaxy. Yeah, Android. Cool. So the data looks clean. That was a really cool little analysis we did just right away. Let's look at some plots. Let's try a categorical scatter plot. Let's try interaction, touch and click. How about we do label? And then what if we segment it by interaction? Cool. So now we can see by the label in the game. These are like the buttons you click on. What the events were. So you have a click, which is a desktop event, and you can see the touch, which is a mobile event, which is really cool. And you can see the counts of those over here, right? So like leave looks like the most clicked on mobile, right? So that's your most clicked item on mobile. So that's a really cool analysis. And I am not sure of too many others. Let's try, and again, we're going to do a lot more than this. I'm just trying to make a really quick, let's go ahead and save this too. We're trying to make a quick analysis to kind of show some of the features. I wonder if we can do let's see if we can find a way to do something with time series. I don't know if there's a way to do that or not. Object property. I don't know about that. Let's see. What is an events timeline? What does that do? Ooh. By month. That's pretty cool. Yep, all these events came in at the same time, so same time, same place. That's really cool. So yeah, I can see that the events are properly put in there. That's really cool. Wonder if I can make this look any cooler. Threshold, value ascending. Yeah, we don't care about that. Yeah, that's really cool. All right, so what's neat about this is it will show. I wonder if there's a way to, they want me to group by properties. I wonder if I can do the label. I wonder what that will do. Oh, okay. So button text. And I don't know what else it did here. That's kind of interesting that it did that. Group by label, and label is button text. That's kind of weird. I'll have to experiment more with that one, but it is pretty cool. You can just have immediately some time, because I have that time series value transformed in the table, I can now start taking advantage of the time related charts in Quiver. So you can see how quickly, though, we start building relatively useful dashboards. And once this is saved, anyone can open it up, and as long as the security permissions are in place, other team members can open this up and start using it. And I can also export this as a template. So if you saw my video on templates, you'll know that that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. And that way I could share this with other people using Foundry. So when we're done, my hope is that we package up Foundry for Gaming with all of the code pipelines and quality checks and everything, including our Quiver dashboards and other apps we're going to build. That'll all get exported as a template that hopefully someone out there may want to use. So I'm going to mess around a little bit more with making this a bit more advanced and talking to some of the people at Palantir to see what can I do with time series, or maybe read some, rather than bother them, maybe I'll just read the documentation, actually. It's probably a better plan. Always read the docs, RTFM, right? So I'm going to go ahead and RTFM and then figure out what more I can do to model in here. And hopefully we can start producing some cool analysis. All right, I figured out a couple cool things too. You can like toggle on and off what things you're showing in here. This is like a layers menu. So I can like turn these things on and off, which is really cool because I don't necessarily always want to see this. Right now, I want to interact with the selected object set, because what that's going to do is it's what I'm using to filter on this thing. So I want to do all of my analysis basically by platform. Sorry, it's for the bar chart here. So all of my analysis is basically based on platform. Right now you're seeing all of the charts I just built for all platforms. Here you're seeing like an interaction type, click or touch, based on the type of element I was interacting with in the game. And these all have specific meanings. There's a semantic meaning to these things. And then you can see the language associated with it, right? So what language the person was using, which is really cool. And now we can see the bar chart of the the thing that they were interacting with by object count. So like how many times did they click game one, how many times did they click game draw, lost, started, etc., which is really cool. Now we're going to build just that scatter plot again, but we're going to build it off the selected items in that bar chart. So we're going to do a categorical scatter plot, and we're going to group by let's try label, and then I want to add some segmentation again. So I want to see the interaction. So we're going to do click and touch. And now this should all update when I actually start drilling down on the items here. So if I do series X, you see all the charts will start to recompute, and they break down now just for that selected item. And let's go ahead and hide this again. I think it's faster to hide it through selected. Let's go ahead and hide that because I don't want to see that while I'm working in the dashboard. But now you can see the actual breakdown of the interaction type on those labels. And if we want to change this to, we'll do interaction of events by label. Let's do interaction type of events by label. And that's a little, and then we'll do events. It's not events by platform, it's events by label. And the reason this is important is like the labels can drive A/B test results, So we change the labels around, and that could actually drive the interactions depending on the copy changes that we make. And there's gonna be other things we're gonna be looking at in the telemetry data as we build this out. But this is really cool, man. Like so quick. Like I built this whole thing too, by the way. Like I think the total invested time where we're at today is less than 2 days of work. So maybe we're at 12 hours, I guess, 12 to 14 hours of both my time to get us here. So this is a really like pretty incredible result to just be done like that fast with this analysis. And this is just the beginning, right? Because like what I built here is just the analysis in Quiver. And it's really cool to see these segmentation capabilities, by the way. Like this is one of the things I've been very impressed with Foundry, is your ability to come in here and segment everything. Because that's one of the things that people always want to be able to do. And it's really easy. You can just add a series too, and then segment by that series, which is really cool. You just click add series, and then you can do choose your metric and then what you want to segment by. which is awesome, dude. Like this makes life way, way easy for a lot of, and like, so like why would you ever need another analytics engine and when you have like all of this capability and it's working on your ontology layer, which is also really important because that ontology layer is like your data fabric for your organization. So like, why would I want to purchase another analytics platform that just takes my data away from me? Essentially, it makes it third-party data. It's harder to integrate it in the overall data fabric. Like because I'm working in the ontology, I can join it with all of the organization's data. I can enrich this with every bit of information, which we're gonna do. But also, I can build more apps on it. Like, wait till you see what we can do with this once we put it into Workshop, right? So we're gonna build actual apps that do stuff. Not just analyze data, but trigger game updates. So that's something we're going to be doing in the near future. But this is the power of Foundry, right? Like you go from nothing, right? I got an API collecting telemetry data to like a fully functional and analysis of the event data. And I put this thing together in like 20 minutes, and like I went from zero on this too. Like I didn't read too much of the docs. I read a little bit of the docs to understand how time series data is handled. But everything else I just put together by intuitively interacting with the program. Like that's how good the UI is like you can just interact with it, you'll figure it out. It's not that hard to do. So yeah, like this is really, really incredible. And again, I'm gonna have Iman over to the house in a couple of days, and we're gonna do a chat, and we're gonna talk about the kind of things that he would typically analyze at Disney, and like we'll start building that more and more into this dashboard, so we get like a really robust production-ready dashboard. So stay tuned, people. All right, so what are the takeaways? The takeaways is, man, this shit is easy. The other takeaway is the only thing I want to do is fucking build value on Foundry, man. Like seriously, this platform is incredible. With the ease with which I went from like nothing, just like having the API up and using something like the serverless cloud, to actually having ingested data that I could model in Quiver and like start to learn and get insights about. I mean, that's just record time, like it's 12 hours, it's like, I think there's like 12 hours of total invested time. Like they're not joking when they say they, turn shit that would take, years into weeks. And now I believe them, seeing what this platform is capable of. So my mind is just racing, and like, I'm just thinking of all the cool shit I could spend my career building on Foundry if given the opportunity. And so I'm going to keep building out this proof of concept, and we're going to see if we can turn this into something that people might actually want to use. And again, I have one of the founders coming over to the house, and we're going to talk about how we can make this like a really, really robust system and see if it could actually be useful for production work. There's also more talk I want to do about how we can stream even more data in, because there's quite a bit of data that's sitting on the server that would also be useful to model. So the next iteration, get ready to see our advanced app in Workshop. Hopefully I'll be able to work with Logan at Palantir and get ready for some more data. All right, so see you next episode.